You don't have to read too many books or watch too many movies before you encounter a main character who dies for others. It's a consistent theme throughout literature, across cultures, and across the ages. There's Sidney Carton from A Tale of Two Cities, Jack from Titanic, Gandalf from Lord of the Rings, Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars, even the tree from Shel Silverstein's The Giving Tree. The list can go on, and I'm sure you could add your own. And for obvious reasons, Christianity in particular has emphasized this dying for others, or for the faith. Many of our saints were martyrs, and indeed we seem to hear this kind of sacrificial death held up in today's reading as the pinnacle of faith and character of God. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. It is so inspirational, heroic even. But it's also an incomplete understanding of what it means to lay down your life for another. Because the shadow side of holding up such sacrificial death as the zenith of our faith is that it can romanticize death or tragedy. It can even reduce a person or define a person by a handful of moments at the end of their lives. It could even suggest the best way to love someone is to die for them. It centers the depth of love in death rather than in life. We can do this with Jesus too. It's so tempting to reduce Jesus to just his final days, to define his love and his life primarily through his death alone. But that would miss the hours, the days, the weeks and years when God walked the earth as one of us, doing the same mundane, day in, day out things we do. It would miss the Jesus who learned his first words at Mary's knee before his words at the tomb called life back into the dead. It would miss the Jesus who took his first steps on wobbly knees before he took his first miracle. The Jesus who picked the lilies in the field before he told us to consider them. The Jesus who skipped stones on the Sea of Galilee before his footsteps skipped across it in a storm. In other words, it would overlook the ordinary sacred moments of Christ's love expressed simply by living and walking with us. The salvation of God cannot be reduced only to the death of God, because laying down your life for one's friends is so much more. Sacrificial love isn't just about sacrificial dying, it's about sacrificial living too. Jesus didn't come only to die for us, he came as much to live with us as well. It's not that I think we should diminish the cost of his death or for any sacrificial death for that matter. There's a reason those stories move us so much. There's a reason we pause to honor those who have died in order to give something greater to those they love. But ask anyone who loved those folks back whether they wouldn't trade it all for just another day, another hour, another minute, another second, another breath with them. We all know the answer to that. And we know that so many people in our world are living that reality right now. Over the past year, our world has experienced an unfathomable amount of loss. 3.2 million deaths in this ongoing pandemic around the globe. And it's important not to forget that. But death isn't the whole story of the past year. It was also about our sacrificial living. A worldwide experience of sacrificial living for the most vulnerable among us. It's just important to remember that. To not lose the thread just of the sorrow. To not lose the thread of the day in, day out, mundane, ordinary, sacrificial living. We sacrifice time with loved ones, with friends, grandparents, and grandchildren. We sacrificed vacationing, graduation ceremonies, dining out without restrictions, walking around without masks, creature comforts. We sacrificed communal worship in this sacred space for some 60 Sundays? This past year has been awful and difficult and strange in ways too many to count. I know that, you know that. It's been hard. But it has also been holy. When we look back on this pandemic season, whenever it finally ends, I think we have a choice on how to see it. We can think of it only as that lost year, as that terrible year, as the year of exile. But we can also see the sacredness in it too. The year when the overwhelming majority of humanity sacrificed together for their friends, for those they love, and even for those whose names they'll never even know. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. We laid down our lives this past year. Maybe it will teach us to honor and dignify the sacredness of sacrificial living just as much as we do sacrificial death. So in the coming weeks, I encourage you to make an intentional practice of noticing the small, everyday ways we sacrifice for each other. Like the ones who do the dishes without asking, or walk the dog, or fill the bird seed feeder during winter. Who lets the pedestrian cross the road, or the driver cut into traffic without a battle. Person who scoops the litter box, changes the diaper, listens longer than their daily tasks really allow. Who sits with the grieving in the darkness, who shows up first and leaves last, whose whole existence is a joyful living sacrifice that brings light to the darkness around us. Notice that person this week. The one who brings life to others through their sacrificial living. Or better yet, be that person this week. Perhaps we can see in that too the love of Christ, who lays down his life for his friends, who didn't just die for them, but who lived for them as well. Amen.